Joining us on this episode is Katy Carl. Katy is a wedding and portrait photographer based in Chicago. Beginning her career as an associate shooter, she quickly flew into the local market, photographing upwards of 60 weddings a year by her second and third season shooting. Shifting perspectives to new lanes of her creative business, we discuss navigating the radical loneliness that can come from investing into radical community. I'm Kyle Wilson, and this is The Photographer's Problem. What are you working on in the biz? What's going on there? Because, okay, so I know are you still shooting as an associate shooter for Carrie? You've obviously
Yeah.
just said you expanded your team. Give me the elevator pitch. What's happening
So
in Katy Carl photography world?
yeah, I work for a couple different companies, and I think part of that has to do with the fact that I always want to expand my knowledge and like be working on other things that don't necessarily have like an anchor with my name. And I think that part of what I'm really excited about within my own company currently, is centering that based around things that I really enjoy. And I think I'm finally coming back to that. I think for a long time with my journey as a business owner, I wasn't sure like what my brand was going to be, what it was going to look like. And coming back to the heart of like who I am, I like rediscovered who I was as a child in a way. And who is Katy Carl? Like, what was she most inspired by when she was 10 years old? Um, and resourcing that to now, like how I operate as a photographer, it's fashion. I love fashion. And um that's fashion photography is currently where I'm anchoring and entering into, I guess. So I've just been like opening my eyes up to like new ways to approach this whole thing. Obviously weddings are going to be a part of it for a little while, and I don't know what that looks. I love it still. I think as long as I love it, I'm still going to do it. And just expanding my horizons and having new ways of doing things and new things that I'm shooting, and um thinking about creative direction has been like a huge part of it too, like just having a branding, um like creating a mood board, having creative direction. What does hair and makeup look like, and what is the inspiration for that? Is it centered on location? Is, that's the sort of thing that I feel like I'm working on right now. So yeah.
That's incredible. What has that sprung thus far? Because obviously you are
Hmm.
very fashion forward. You've always been that way. You also present your own branding that way. I feel like it's like your personality ties with the way that you present your appearance and your style. It's all kind of one and the same. But what is that taking shape so far in terms of like, have you been
Yeah.
shooting for fashion brands? Have you just been planning your own shoots that don't have brands attached because you're like, I just want to make stuff, or what's
Hmm.
it look like?
It's like all of the above. Yeah. I am a very like energetic person, enthusiastic about literally everything. I feel like I say yay more than anything else. I just got shot. I just got shot. I just got back from New York Fashion Week. So, it was the bridal fashion week this past week in New York, and I was able to go shoot that. So, making connections with bridal companies, shooting for them, shooting editorials. Um, Earlier in January, I went to Paris, and that was during New York Fashion, or not New York. Earlier this year in January, I went to Paris, and that was during Paris Fashion Week, actually. So, um, just even being there and seeing the street style and like shooting the street style and like putting myself in places where things are happening, is in a way helping me to show that that's part of who I am. Um, so yeah, that's what I've been up to. I've been shooting for a lot of bridal brands. I'm gonna be going back this fall, so that's gonna be really exciting. And that's like kind of how this is all starting out. I feel like this year has been mostly the year where that's kind of being kicked off, because in the past, like I haven't really done a lot of that. It's been mostly editorials. But yeah.
Yeah. Are you hoping to kind of start the tiptoe with wedding? Because obviously that's the most like closely grabbable item, like wedding gowns and bridal companies, and then expand and be like, okay, that's cool. That got me in the door, but now I want to go do stuff that has nothing
Mhm.
to do with weddings in terms of fashion.
I would love to shoot like actual New York Fashion Week. It's just so cutthroat. I'm a little scared, of course, like with anything that you should do, you experience a little bit of fear behind it, but I would love to like try. I would love to try it, and then from there like just figure it out, because there's so many different ways of communicating with professionals in that industry, that and even just operating the way that you operate, it's just so different.
I think you're ripe for it though, from like the people that I have talked to that have experience and like work in that industry. And one of my earliest podcast guests, her name is Sophie, and she's a photographer for Kendall Jenner's tequila brand, and she's also a
Hmm,
New York Fashion Week photographer. She's
cute.
very successful, and she has a lot of the same traits as you and that I've seen in your business and as a personality, where you're really energetic. So you make everyone around you feel like
Hmm,
they're able to be excited about the thing, but also you've got your business shit together. You're like, I still also have things to do. Like I can be excited, but I'm not
hmm.
oblivious. And so I think
Yeah,
that's right for the taking,
thank
and
you.
that's why your weddings have soared so well. Do you
Thank you.
what's you said you brought somebody new onto your team? So like,
Yeah.
what's your team looking like now?
Yeah, so I outsourced like some people to do SEO for me. And I'm also working with an editor now. So that's a fun thing. Editing has always been the thing that has tripped me up. While I have a style, it's been really exciting to trust someone else with that. There is this nuance though within handing things off to other people where it starts to feel like shit, like is this still my voice? Like do I still have full control over this project? I think that's been the number one thing that's been like the hardest, but I do feel so much more free to create in ways that like I people always say like do the thing that you can do 100% well, you should hand off to people that can do it 80% well because that gives them opportunities to grow as well. And from there, too, it's empowering them to become the best versions of themselves, too. If there's an editor that loves to edit, of course I'm going to like trust them to edit because that's their niche. My niche may not necessarily be that 100% of the time. And it frees me up to do other things. So,
Yeah, I think the notion has been like as people have brought on external editors, because that wasn't always a thing, obviously, or people have started to navigate towards AI editing, that like
mm-hmm,
it's not necessarily about, oh, new time has been found to do other stuff, which is the quick like low hanging fruit. But in fact, I think it's just elevating the baseline of good.
it's
Like your
elevating.
baseline of good has been elevated to a set, and you're like, cool. Now that that's the
Mm-hmm.
standard, how can I raise it even further?
100%. It's just constantly raising the bar higher and higher. Excellence. Do everything with excellence for sure.
Yeah. Do you foresee yourself wanting to have a larger and larger team? Like, do you? I spoke with Ryan Brown
Mm-hmm.
from Forge of the North recently, and he
Mm-hmm.
has two studios with 10 shooters total or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And it's a really crazy endeavor, and he's got a wife and three kids, and it's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
But like, do you want to have a big team like that, or do you want to keep it like tight knit?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's one that I feel like I get all the time. I have no idea, and like the thought of managing that scares me a little bit because it's a lot going on all the time. And even to have like someone who's managing the studio for me, like that just seems a little bit out of reach for me currently. But further from that, I think too, I'm just taking things one step at a time. I don't know if I would ever have a whole team of shooters. Maybe one day when I start to have kids, that could be something that I reach into. If that ever becomes a thing, like who knows, like what life is going to look like. But ultimately, I love where I'm at right now. I love keeping things small. I feel like also maintaining relationships with my clients is something that I really, really like love about my business. And so being the one that's, I do have a few automated emails, but for the most part, I'm typing every email. So I just love the connection piece of, my clients know that these emails are coming from me. The phone calls are me. Like I don't have someone else managing my brand. I just feel it's not a control issue. I just feel like I do have more control though over my business and my clients, and I can have more of a relationship with my clients as well. That's something that I really value.
Yeah, you're one of those photographers that you're very different than me in that way, that like and I'm
Hmm.
pretty, I'll be public about this, like I'm pretty vain in my bonding with my clients. Like I do keep a smaller amount of them so that I can remember them and have these connections,
Yeah.
but that's all kind of just part of the branding,
Yeah.
the perception. Am I once I shoot their wedding and they're out of my life, they're out of my brain. But you actually really do keep these connections because you've made
Hmm.
so many great strides to do so. What's been one of your better business decisions along the way that have gotten you to like where you're at now?
Mm.
Where I'm really right now you just mentioned you brought an external editor on, or I know you went back to school for some stuff. Like but something that you can
Yeah.
kind of pinpoint and go, that was a good
Ooh.
decision.
One of the best decisions I've ever made. Hmm. That's a hard question. Um, I think because I'm so young too, like I've only been doing this for 3 years. This is my fourth season. I truthfully think that my best decision, hands down, was just like moving to the city. Like I grew up in Oklahoma. I moved to Wisconsin, like lived in like kind of hick town, and never felt like I fit there. But just I think it was just the initial stride and starting. That was the best decision. That was the best decision for me. And surrounding myself with people in the city, being surrounded by people who do really great do who have really great businesses, and asking questions, like literally asking questions from leaders that do all sorts of different things. I think that that's been probably, and that's maybe a little bit of a loop around your question, but I do definitely think that my best decision was starting.
No, I think that's amazing because when you moved to the city, I know that you had some pretty big goals where you're like, I want to be like your apartment that you live in was like one of your goals. We've talked about this, but
Yeah.
was your goal when
Hmm.
you moved here to, I know it was to be a creative and an entrepreneur and whatnot.
Hmm.
Was photography like, did you hit the ground and go, I'm a photographer, I live in the city, that's the goal, that's the plan?
No, not at all. I had no idea what I wanted to do. When I moved here, I literally was pursuing a communications degree, was sort of doing that hands off, hands on, hands off. Made a few connections with people who owned a creative space in the city. And it was pretty much like a studio, a bunch of like entrepreneurs that all had their own photography businesses. But I was actually a videographer like 6 years ago. Like, I was really bad. But from there, you go on my Vimeo, they're still up. It's so bad. But I'm very grateful for those clients that trusted me and paid me maybe $50 to make a wedding video. Um, but everyone starts somewhere, and I think that as well, you just have to start. And whenever I just made connections along the way, doors just started opening, and it was one thing to the next. And I really, what happened was COVID inspired me to do creative shoots. One of my best friends, who you've shot now too, Piper, um she's booming now, like it's insane. She and I did shoots every single once a week. We had a different theme. Um and we I had like backdrops. It was like very DIY. She did her own makeup. We had inspiration for the theme of the shoot, and she wanted to be in a, like, I don't even know what type of modeling she wanted to do, but she just wanted to model. She was super into fashion, and I loved like all of that stuff too. And from there, like it was literally just me and her. Maybe a couple other people, like her sister would come sometimes, and like she had like a whole like wardrobe and like all this stuff. But moving to the city has been so fundamental to up leveling that, because then from there, like so many doors just started opening, and I met a couple of people that would do shoots similar to that, but just like a little bit different. I mean, I feel like the aesthetic has evolved and grown. Like people were wearing these wide brim hats and like drinking coffee and like making videos of like their pour overs, and like that became a thing. But it's just like the one step at a time. One door opens, another door closes. I got invited to be an associate for a wedding photographer, and that's really what kind of channeled my wedding photography career into what it is now. I've learned so much along the way.
Yeah, I think just like not everyone that wants to do their next step in a creative field needs to move to a city or move down the block or
Mm.
across their own town. But I think what they do need to do beyond just starting is they need to go, hey, I want to do something. And in order to do
Hmm.
something, you have to make moves. And you knew,
Yeah.
you didn't know what it was specifically. Obviously, like it's great that it's coming full circle from
Hmm.
you being focused on fashion and always being that because it's just part of your identity. And now being able to have set yourself up with this like sustainable success to go and
Hmm.
actually do that again, but to move and make that big first thing. I
Hmm.
think that's absolutely a really great note of like your best business decision because here you are now.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
being said,
yeah.
what's been what's been the worst one? Has there been something that you've learned and you're like, oh man, I did not need to be doing that, or I won't be doing it
Hmm.
again?
I don't really know. Um, my worst decision, I think in the realm of, yeah, yeah, definitely. I don't think that you need to move in order to achieve what you want, your dreams. But I do think that one of my worst worst decisions, and maybe I'm gonna like circle around this question a little bit because when I first started, I just took on so much and I didn't let myself play. Like I very quickly lost the, and I was also trying to find myself. I was trying to find my own brand persona, my own like voice in the midst of all of that. Um, I removed a lot of that, stopped doing a lot of those old things. And I think sometimes you do have to like hightail, take on a whole bunch so you can learn a whole bunch. Um, and so I was just working every day, like super, super busy, just always. And I do think that like when you love what you do, you'll do it all the time. And it became my identity. Like wedding photography was what I ate, breathe, sleep. Like I was doing it all the time. I took on like 63 weddings my first year, and it was a lot. And burnout was real. It definitely was real. And every single year since then, I've learned how to set boundaries in different ways. Now, necessarily, does that mean that I'm taking on less work? No, but like I am excited about the type of work that I'm doing and the process and the systems that I would kind of set in the midst of that. And so now that I have a little bit of a team built around me, I can play more. I'm really enjoying, going to Paris and like setting up editorial shoots. I'm enjoying going to New York and shooting New York Fashion Week. Like those are the sorts of things that now I'm figuring out more of the brand that I am, I guess. And like that's always been a part of me. But now I'm doing it. And I think that has been probably my worst decision is that the first couple of years I did way too much and didn't let myself enjoy the journey. The journey is just so beautiful. So um, looking back, that's something that I probably would say is my worst decision, I guess.
Yeah, I think that that's something that a lot of creatives go through. I know I did as well, and I kind of did it under the guise of this Ira Glass quote that I really like, where he talks about when you're an
Yeah.
artist and you're starting out, you are chasing your style and you do this immense volume of work and fail a bunch to kind of get there. But I remember specifically a couple of phone calls early in my career telling my friends, feeling really down about myself, going, I have a lot more personality than just this job, but if you were to think of me, I'm just Kyle the photographer. And it's like my friends that have known me growing up know there's so much more, but in this current season or era, that it's just this. And I think that a lot of creatives, because we get into it because we like it, or we get into it because we love it, or we get into it because we're interested by it, and it only takes like a little bit of hyperfixation, and now
Mm-hmm.
it's all you do and all you think about, and it can make it this. It can suck the fun out of it a little bit in the form of burnout or in the form of not being able to play. So, I think that that can be. It almost doesn't feel like a decision sometimes because it's very hindsight. Like I don't think anybody that's about to start getting into it. I think actually when I met you, I could tell. I was like, "Ooh, that's happening," but you can't really tell. Actually,
Yeah.
I didn't say, "Oop, that's happening." I called it out more abrupt than that. But
No,
you
you
really
were like,
can't
hey,
tell
like
until
you're working
after.
too much.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very high. You
Yeah.
have. It has to be a lived experience.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I think sometimes you have to realize it yourself too. Like as much as so many people were telling me in that time, like, hey, like you're doing way too much. Here, let me show you what you can be doing. I didn't know what automations were at all. I had no idea what those were. You're the automations king.
Yeah, yeah.
You're
I
like,
think
here,
we
let
sat
me
down. I was
just
like,
help you
you
out.
should be. Why are you doing anything more than once?
Yeah, definitely. 100%.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I
yeah,
think
definitely.
I still think actually though the funny thing is even though I went through like as everybody does, their own strange personal slash creative journey. I'd probably
Mm-hmm.
still do it again the same way. Like as much as today, I really love.
Mm.
Now I'm fully separated from it. I really love my Saturdays. Whenever I'm biking around and I see 5 or 6 weddings going on in various parks, I actually think of you often. I'm like, I bet she's shooting
You
some
think of
wedding
me?
over there, and I'm on my bike. And I think, oh, I always look to see if the photographer is someone I know of the three or
Yeah.
four in the of town. But I, during the beginning of it, I'd probably do it the same. Like it's kind of what
Mm-hmm.
this New York thing has me chasing. I kind of miss
Yeah.
being really obsessed with this end goal.
It
And
makes you
I,
buzz. Like, dude, it's
yeah,
fun. It's
yeah,
fun.
I've always called it kind of like the top of the wave. Like if I have to book a flight this week and it's my first one in a few weeks, I'm like kind of cumbersome about it. But if I have 2 flights this week and I have 2 flights a week for the next 6 weeks, I'm all top of it. And it's that way with work too. If I'm got a random shoot here and a random shoot there, it's okay. But if I've got 4 shoots this week and 4 shoots next week and 4 shoots the week after, things are going to run really smooth. I like being in that kind of flow state of creative
Mm-hmm.
process.
Mm-hmm. I love
So
that.
you're working on play now more, and that's taking form in fashion work, and obviously just the way you incorporate that in your own life too. What are you working on, like that's kind of like business adjacent? So you've got your business, you've got this secondary play thing going on, you've got people coming on board as your team, but I feel like I know you, and you're always, like you said at the beginning, you're always trying to educate yourself, or the way I put it, I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to be the dumbest person in the room as often as possible. Like what are you currently trying to educate yourself on?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like I'm always pursuing really random things like fitness or like learning how to create the best timeline for how my systems and my tasks are being operated or completed for lack of a better term. I just downloaded Final Cut again. I'm learning how to edit videos again. That I mean, I feel like what am I learning in my business? It's just like constant every day. I feel like updating systems. I have no idea an exact pinpoint,
Did you read
so to
Atomic Habits?
speak.
Are you an Atomic Habitser?
Yes,
Okay, yeah, I read
I am.
half, and
I
it came
have,
right. It came right at the time that I had like figured out I might have ADHD. I got into bullet journaling. I read half of Atomic Habits, and it really changed everything for the
yeah.
last 2 or 3 years. And so it doesn't surprise me that you also picked that up and were like, how can I systemize this?
I no, systems are my favorite. They're like literally my best friend, like figuring out how to make sure that everything, like if I do one thing, it follows up with this thing and this next thing and this next thing. Um, I don't know how to answer your question better. Um,
That's okay.
I
No,
feel
I
like
feel like
every
you
day is
you lead a
different.
really I always get the perception that you lead a really disciplined life. Like if you're not
Mm,
just somebody who says, "Ooh, I." There's people who go, "I work out," but when I think about a gym routine that's solo and operated without like independently from a trainer or anything like that, I do actually think of you quite regularly because I go, "Oh, Katie is somebody who said I'm going to do that thing." And then goes all in it and does it really, really well
hmm
at a high level and turns it into this like system and routine.
mm.
Is there anything within your business that you're trying to kind of figure that part out now too?
It I think in many ways it's probably just onboarding new people, and learning how those systems work, how I can be a good leader and how I can be a good like employer, I guess, so to speak, with these new people, especially like with my editor. Like, how do we manage the system in the best way possible with all of the weddings that you're going to be editing? Um, and from there, I think that's going to allow me to figure out what's next. Um, I'm kind of not necessarily dragging my feet on what's next, but allowing space to determine what that's going to be. Um, because I feel like my best ideas just come to me whenever I'm in the middle of, I don't even know, like traveling usually is when my best ideas come to me. And I have quite a few travel weddings this year. Um, And so I think that, whenever I can come to that, that's going to be revolutionary. We'll see what that is, though.
Yeah, I think if you try to plan like, I mean, not everyone's like this, but I think that the stuff that just hits you like a wave of inspiration when you're not trying, it's not
Yeah, it's
dissimilar like
usually
dating. It's
poolside
like
with a few mocktail or cocktails, not mocktails. I do not drink mocktails. It's
she's poolside with
usually
alcohol,
it's
everybody.
like
Not
it's
my,
usually when I've had quite a few drinks where I'm like, this is a great business move. I'm not an alcoholic, by the way. I'm just
she's not alcoholic, she's just alcohol inspired.
literally no. That's typically what it is. I feel like, or I'm in nature somewhere and I'm like, you guys,
Yeah.
I have an
And
idea.
despite not knowing what's next, what's your problem? What are you working on right now? Like
Oh,
what's the uphill hurdle?
yeah,
If it's
good
not what's
question.
next necessarily.
Yeah, my topic for this whole interview.
The
I
ruse
feel
is broken.
like
She already picked a topic, guys. She told me in advance,
no, I
but
did,
I
I did.
everything's a false production. All authenticity is fake.
I'm prepared.
But as expected. So what's your problem? What's your prepared problem?
Yeah, my what?
Your prepared problem.
Oh, my prepared problem. Um, okay, so when you're an entrepreneur, especially in this field, as a business owner, especially, you can classify it however you want. I think that there is so much rooted in being radically connected with creatives while simultaneously being radically lonely. And I think that fueling that creative ambition alongside other people who are like sort of doing the same thing and running in the same direction as you, like whatever that looks like, I feel like I am always more excited about my work whenever there's other people doing like really cool stuff. This is like literally in alignment with what I was saying with about being in New York. Um, when I'm there, I'm literally like I'm buzzing. Like I'm so excited about what I'm creating. I have new ideas. I'm constantly inspired by how other people are running and chasing what they're doing. Um but Daisy, can you move? Daisy. Okay. Um yeah, are you going to be here? Okay. Sounds good. Um I feel like I at least have a lot of clients who aren't particularly fond of their own jobs, and I love my job. It reminds me so much of how much I love my job. And we live in a world where most people aren't super excited about their jobs. And so being a creative, like we choose to do this. Like usually, at least, if it's not chosen for you. But um I guess it's still just so isolating because we work ourselves so creatively dry to the point where it's really hard to find new inspiration for things, and or you're just working a lot and you're doing a lot of things alone. You don't necessarily have coworkers that can tell you how to do things. You kind of have to create that community for yourself. um and so if you're ever just like sending invoices or sending contracts or sending emails or sending your clients like an update on things or asking them for updates, and you're having these calls with them, you're doing it by yourself. And I think that the more that you just do it alone, the harder it is to maintain it in a way that is like inspiring to yourself too. Um,
Yeah, I think that I complain about that in a different way as well. But the general shtick is that like we don't have a job we get to go to and socialize. We aren't in
yeah,
school, so we're not getting that socialization there. And those are two places that most people are getting a lot of their social check boxes met. And if you're in this job that is highly individual, your individual opinion is what's your taste, opinion, etc., is what's shaping your business. I have found what it turns me into is I'm an anti-collaborator. As soon as someone else gives me an idea, I don't want to do it.
mm,
And even if it's a good idea, even if it's an idea I had already, I'm like, it came out of someone else's mouth. I don't want to do it. And that's not great in terms of um, finding other people to share creative space with. And so, or it makes me just extra picky so that when I do find people that I want to share creative space with, it's because we align on things, or I really have to seek them out from a respect or ambition standpoint. Um, do you like I mean I know that you've tried various forms of this, but have you done anything as of recent that puts you in in the community co-working space. I
Hmm.
think pre-COVID, I hung out with photographers all the time. And then COVID happened, and suddenly my pool of people that I could co-work with widened a ton. And so my best friend is a consultant for Deloitte. There's no way I'd be able to hang out with her 3 years
No.
ago, 4 years ago prior to
Yeah.
COVID. But now, 2, 3, 4 days a week, we're on laptops together somewhere. Are
Yeah.
you actively seeking those things out, and does it help, or do you still feel that, as you said, radical loneliness?
No, that's a really good point as well with kind of the communication around how COVID has influenced. I don't know what that was like before because I had not started yet. Um, but I do imagine there are social groups that are really important that fill that void. Um, I used to meet up with people for coffee and like work with them. I feel like I'm most productive at home. And it also depends on if you're introverted or extroverted. I think that the key word that you said as well was um, filling that social check mark or having that check mark of your social life um, met. I in the school thing, being in school, being in an office space, there's reasons why there are like not necessarily creative agencies, but studio spaces like the one that I mentioned earlier that really introduced me to a lot of things that I am now really excited about and kicked off my business in so many ways. Um, that support system is irreplaceable, and I feel like when you're the only one in your business, you're constantly reminded of the like how much more there is to do. Like I feel like I could keep working on things like sun up to sundown and never run out of things to do. But it's the
It's hard to
balance
clock
and the
out.
it's hard to clock out. And and when you get to a point where you know what you're doing, it's time to outsource and it's time to like live outside of your job. Um, I think that I have found that in some ways. Like there are so many people in the industry that I know and love to meet up with. But again, it's the collaboration piece. I think that I'm similar in the sense that like I don't want to collaborate with you on something like I want it to be mine. But it's doing things alongside other people who also have big goals and big dreams and like seeing what they're doing and supporting it. Instagram is really great for that. I love seeing what everyone's up to, and I love being able to cheer other people on their big projects, and sharing mine as well. But it's also really hard to. It's this dichotomy. It's so nuanced. Like cheering people on while also being like, well, fuck, like I'm not doing enough. Like, what about like my launch was not as good as theirs or like something like that. It's very nuanced, but you just have to stay in your lane and then your lane gets lonely. It's so like nuanced and
I
then yeah.
I think something that can help that I've really found beneficial is that I early in my like community building career, etc., all the people I hung out with were wedding photographers or wedding videographers, which is great. And I was
Yeah.
really lucky to find people whom shared common interests outside of the work part. But a lot of our conversation existed, the foundation of our friendship existed because we did the same thing. And I think the book on photography as a whole, in my opinion, is a pretty short read. And it just kind of starts to become this little echo chamber of we're all just talking about the same. We just talk about the same thing over and
Mm-hmm.
over and over again, and it doesn't change. And that made me feel like my friends only knew me as Kyle the photographer, and I'm like, there's a lot more there. And
Yeah.
so I started to try to like diversify. So right now I have friends who are photographers because we met via that connection, but we don't talk about work. Or the majority of my friends on my day to day, like my five closest people in the world, are not photographers. They're something else. And I think that it's another New York thing that feels kind of nice. And I've heard this comparison in another podcast about like the LA industry that everyone in LA is in like the movie industry. And so everyone you run into is in some form of it. But when you go to New York, huge diversity,
Everyone's
blue
doing
collar,
so many
white collar.
different
There's so many
things.
different things. And Chicago has that a bit too. But this like
Yeah.
my friendship group shouldn't just be creatives. Otherwise, I don't
Yeah.
want to feel like that's all I live and breathe because it can feel lonely too that we're just
Mm-hmm.
all circling the same drain.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think that's why editorials have been so fun for me is because you work with hair and makeup, you work with florists that are like insane. They're going, guess where they're catching a flight tomorrow. They're going to go to like, I don't know, Dubai. And like you're following them along and they're doing such cool things. And it's really cool to have those meeting points in life where everyone's off doing all these really cool things, and maybe you can collaborate together on a project that's like gonna get published somewhere, and being able to have these shared experiences with people that are all doing really fun things is the part of what we do that I find really exciting. So that's what I would say too. Yeah, it's definitely true. Having people in your network that are doing other things in photography. Yes, like I do have a lot of connections in photography, but I would argue too, yeah, it's really important to have people that do other things than just
Yeah. And people
weddings.
that are also in just other lanes. Like I want to meet and talk to someone who's a Lake Michigan water research biologist. That person knows a huge world of stuff I have no knowledge about. But if we were to talk
Yeah.
about photography, if I meet with a photographer, chances are 85% of what we're talking about I already knew. And it doesn't put me in that dumbest position in the room
Yeah.
spot. And I don't feel like I'm getting nutritional knowledge to my brain. And so I think that,
I love
yeah,
that.
I can really relate on that. Oh, it's community over competition, tight community. We're all chatting, we're all talking, we're all referring and benefiting, and especially in a bigger city. If you live in the middle of nowhere, this is a little tough. You're probably in your office working by yourself. But if you're in a major metro, you're probably hanging out, going to networking events, doing shoots, something like that, and it can feel a little like, oh, there's a quote from a
Yeah.
movie I'll pull out of my
Tell
head
me
here,
it.
but it's Robin Williams is at the end of this movie called World's Greatest Dad, and he says, "I thought the worst feeling in the world was to be lonely," and he said the worst feeling in the world is to be surrounded by people that make you feel lonely, and I think that that can happen in any creative, well, actually any industry for that matter, but we're on a creative podcast, so in the creative field, you can be just surrounded by tons of people and feel those pangs of envy and jealousy. And I struggle with that on a pretty major level. And just beat yourself up. And it can really be this kind of crazy rabbit hole. So what do you like? You're making really big strides towards like working with people in other spaces, in other fashion spaces. Do you how do you like work on that from a day to day to a week to week standpoint? Do you have little systems in your world where like I know that I
Hmm.
see my trainer and I know that I have this social group thing and I got a book club, or how do you make sure that you have healthy nutritional social habits in your kind of week to
Yeah.
week?
That's good. Like just like week to week planning everything out. Is that what you're saying?
Well, just like making sure that you know you're like, hey, I know this week's coming up, and oh man, if I don't
Yeah,
put a couple of these social things in there, I won't
true.
feel that great at the end of the week.
True. Um, No, that's really interesting. I don't have a system for that. I think I just base things off how I feel. Um, because being in tune with myself has been very fundamental to how I operate and how I go throughout. I know that my wedding season is about to get crazy. So what am I doing right now? I'm trying to see friends that I maybe am not going to see until November. Um, and like I think the hugest thing for me is going for runs, like shutting out the world. Because I right now I'm going to be socializing with a lot of people, especially pouring out a lot of my energy and making sure that people are taken care of. I do a lot of serving others, and that's just like how my job works. Like it's just a lot of serving other people because it's people's wedding days, it's people getting photographed and making sure that everyone's comfortable. So for me, taking some time for myself looks like going for a 30-minute run. It looks like maybe waking up a little bit later than I maybe would, or it's getting up and getting outside right away in the morning. I really do think that that looks different, and sometimes it's even like booking a hair appointment, like literally the smallest things that is just like self-care. Those are my moments for ensuring that the balance is there, and staying fully present. Maybe it's getting off my phone, like as simple as that. It's like, just let me just, I'm not going to text anyone back today, sorry,
Yeah, it's finding
I'll get
those.
back
It's
to
being
my email
mind.
tomorrow.
it's being mindful of the activities that might make you feel crummy. Like if you know that, hey, if I'm on my phone all day, I'm gonna feel bad about it or crappy about it. Or I'm just
Mm-hmm.
gonna feel non-productive, and I don't need to be productive necessarily, but it will make me feel bad. So what if I went and read a book instead? That's something I've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
yeah, I think that's such a I think that early creatives, like when you first started, are less attuned to that like compass being calibrated to those feelings and sensations. You're just driven solely by ambition, and it's so great to hear that like you've taken this approach of being a highly busy, highly successful um, photographer who's so close with all of her clients, and
mm,
also calibrated that compass to make sure that Katy feels great. That way
it's
they feel
important.
great later because those clients are also going to get served better than you had a little thumbs up. Thanks, Apple. Those clients are going to get served better because you feel
Mm.
better.
Having a full cup is like one of the most important things to make sure that when you're pouring out, like literally there's no way that you're going to be able to just keep pouring out until you make sure that there's sort of a routine with how you pour back into yourself. Because you're giving value to your clients and you have to give value to yourself too. And so that thing may not be running in a couple of months. It may be something else. I may need to figure something else out that's going to fill my cup, but pouring out to my clients is literally the way things work around here. Like there's definitely no way that I can pour from an empty cup because that's the path to burnout. And I think from there, you're gonna find yourself quitting your job really quickly. And especially with operating at such a high caliber, um, you you can't neglect yourself in the process because you are your business. And if your business starts to suffer, so will you. You're going to be the first person to go. And um, your clients don't deserve that. You don't deserve that. First of all, you are the most important person in the process. But to serve others, you have to make sure that you're taken care of. And, I can't tell you how many times I can't show up to a phone call 100%. Just like we had to reschedule this one. I was sick last week. I'm not 100%. So I reschedule phone calls sometimes because
Yeah,
I need to, because I'm not
yeah.
going to
You
show
can.
up 100%.
I heard someone recently, and I can't say that I've done it myself too much, but it was the idea that like we've got this culture that has started to embrace the idea of the mental health day, which is really great. But
Mm,
those are on day. It's assumed that a mental health day is a bad day. But honestly, I moved a couple meetings around yesterday because it was 70 degrees outside. My mental health day was it's nice out. I want to go ride my bike. I don't feel bad. I just want to go take advantage of something that will make me
mm,
feel good. And I think that in our job, especially serving clients all year long, but in general, just in our job, that you are your boss, and your boss doesn't need to be like a judge, jury, and executioner. Take a break, have a mental health day,
yeah.
and that might look like I know busy photographers who carve it out. They go, I have 2 days a month in my calendar. Those days are off limits, and it gives them this thing to look forward to, rather than just assuming that, oh, well, everyone's busy. I need to be busy. Everyone's launch went really well. I need it. I need to go and work sun up to sundown, as you said.
Yeah. No, I think that you said it really well too, being in tune with taking days as they come as well, because who knows like how you're going to feel on your day off as well. Like what if you're not feeling the best and maybe working is going to be the healthiest thing for you? That's okay. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm on vacation and I'm like, what would make me feel most available to rest right now is answering this one email before I get to it. That's okay. It's okay to
Yeah,
bring your laptop.
removing
Shut it
that.
down though. It's
Yep,
okay.
removing that itch in the back of your head. That's like, there's that one thing. You know what?
Hmm.
Let's knock it out, and I'll feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. Self-care is really important.
Yeah, man, so good. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. I love getting a chance to catch up with you. And when I click on record, we're going to make some plans to hang out. But um, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so glad we got to do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Hopefully it was beneficial and added value to your space here. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you asking me.
Yeah. Tremendous value. Thanks, Katie. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah.